production, but the Keystone Pipeline would make it financially viable to extract this toxic sludge, even at lower prices. Making it easier to extract and refine tar sands means that more of it will be burned, and more of it being burned will contribute to global warming, and that's the biggest reason why President Obama needs to reject the Keystone XL. Back in 2013, President Obama said, quote, "The net effects of the pipeline's impact on our climate will be absolutely critical to determining whether this project is allowed to go forward," end quote. If he stands by that statement, this new letter from the EPA should be all he needs to say no to TransCanada and their tar sands sludge. As Bill McKibben of 350.org explained, the president has all the nails he needs to finally close the lid on this particular boondoggle. Both houses of Congress have passed the controversial bill, so it's up to President Obama now to block Keystone from becoming reality. Hopefully, this EPA letter will help him to say no to this pipeline once and for all. Facebook knows what you look like. According to a new article in Science magazine, the social media site has software that is now as accurate as a human being at a few constrained facial recognition tasks. That system is called Deep Face, and Facebook claims they're using it to protect you, not to spy on you. They claim that once the system recognizes your face in any of the 400 million photos that users upload every day, you will be getting an alert from Facebook telling you that you appear in the picture. Computer scientist who directs the program says that you can then choose to blur out your face from the picture to protect your privacy. What wasn't explained, however, was whether or not there will be a digital record of your face in that picture and what happens when it's linked to a protest or a private event. Although we could try to restrict Facebook from developing or using such software, it would likely just pop up from another developer. Our government has spent a fortune developing similar software, and companies like Google are working on their own versions. This type of software may be here to stay, so we better figure out how to protect what's left of our privacy. When our earliest ancestors crawled out of the oceans, they didn't have fully developed ears. However, science says that they used their lungs to pick up sound in their new, dry environment. According to new research published in the journal Proceedings of the Royal Society, the very first land animals had ears that were more like the ears of frogs than modern-day mammals. Researchers conducted the various experiments to determine that fish detect sound through vibration in their swim bladders, and our early ancestors copied that trait with their newly developed lungs. Study author Peter Madsen explained that lungs started to appear in fish underwater when they evolved air breathing in response to low oxygen levels in water 350 to 400 million years ago. Those lungs adapted to feel vibrations in the air and eventually evolved into the middle ear. So the very same organ that allowed us to breathe on land allowed us to hear each other today as well. A toxic algae bloom in California has killed at least 3 dogs, but that doesn't spell good, and it doesn't spell good news for the future. The bloom appeared in East Bay Regional Park, which hasn't seen an algae bloom in 80 years, and certainly hasn't ever seen one in the winter. Rising temperatures and prolonged drought have created the perfect conditions for algae growth, and that algae is toxic to pets and wildlife. A spokesperson for the park said, "We're putting up more signs and making them more obvious to keep dogs away from the water." While that may help protect people's beloved pets, it does little to protect the wildlife that lives in the park and relies on that lake for food and water. This is just one more example of the devastating effects of global warming. Last year it happened in Ohio, now it's hitting California, and toxic algae could bloom in your local waterway next. It's time to get serious about protecting our planet and preventing more pets and people from getting sick from toxic water. And finally, the safety of our food is currently monitored by 3 different agencies, but President Obama wants to streamline the process. Right now, the Department of Agriculture inspects meat and eggs, the Food and Drug Administration oversees most other foods, and the CDC alerts customers when there's a food safety recall. President Obama says that the fractured oversight and disparate regulatory approaches cause confusion. So he's proposing that we roll all those functions into one new agency and have it operate under the Department of Health and Human Services. Rather than splitting up the process of monitoring our food, the president says that agency should fall under HHS because foodborne illness and outbreaks are public health concerns. According to the CDC, there are about 48 million cases of foodborne illness every year. So it's obvious that we need to improve the way food safety is monitored. Whether that means one agency or 3, it's nice to see that this important issue is being considered by our nation's highest-ranking official. And And that's the way it is for the week of February 9th, 2015. I'm Thom Hartmann on Science and Green News.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And happy Thursday, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. Thom Hartmann here with you on this, boy, it's getting very, very, very windy here in Washington, D.C. HSBC just got away with buying a cocaine plane. Really? This over at the Daily Beast? This is an amazing story. Let's check in with America's lawyer, Mike Papantonio, host of Ring of Fire Radio, ringofireradio.com, and one of the finest lawyers in the country. Hey, Pap.
Tom, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you for joining us. You've got some inside skinny on this HSBC thing?
Yeah, well, the drug plane is just a small part of it, but now we know what we've suspected all along. Yeah, Tom, the HSBC story is critically important for many reasons.
May I interrupt for a second?
Yeah.
Just for our viewers or listeners who may not know what we're talking about, HSBC is, I think they're the biggest bank in the world, aren't they?
They are.
Or is it? Yeah, and it's a Swiss-based bank, but they do business in the United States. Okay, back to you.
Yeah, but they're one of many banks that are engaged in this same type of thing that I'm going to describe. But one reason this is an important story is Loretta Lynch, the woman Obama nominated for AG, was involved in giving HSBC a free pass for laundering money for drug cartels and for engineering treasonous illegal deals with both Iran and North Korea. She was the one that her name was on the charges. Another Eric Holder appointment, Lanny Brewer, who you might remember, was also involved in proclaiming that HSBC would not be prosecuted and instead they'd only pay a fine for conduct. Tom, it would have put the average American in prison for life.
Lanny was an old Clinton guy, wasn't he?
Worse than that. Yeah. The answer is yes, but let me tie it up even more. Lanny, you'll recall, was a Covington Burling lawyer. Covington Burling is a silk-stocking Washington, D.C. law firm that has been, they handle all the Wall Street mega thugs. Lanny Brewer and his Covington Burling firm gave 5 Wall Street mega banks a free pass for crimes that involve fraud, treason, money laundering, inside trading, price fixing, antitrust, theft, and even in more RICO events, Tom, than we could possibly cover in this short interview. No executive went to prison for any of that, for any reason. First, Covington Burling included Holder, and then Brewer, and then several other Covington Burling types that were deep-seated in the Department of Justice. And so their business is handling white-collar criminal cases. That's before Eric Holder was ever appointed. Huge amounts of money. If you add to this whole thing of why does all this happen, how does a bank like HSBC involved in laundering money for drug cartels, buying boats and airplanes that are used to transport drugs, how do they get away with it? Well, here's how it comes. Here's how it works out. Huge amounts of money have been given to Democratic political campaigns, including Obama's. And a huge amount of money goes all the way back to Bill Clinton, where all this love affair with Wall Street began. So in that love affair, all these Wall Street white-collar banking gangsters got such a free pass because during those Clinton years, Wall Street has methodically packed the SEC and the Justice Department with industry hacks that they could count on to hand out get-out-of-jail passes to banking mobsters. So HSBC HSBC is an important story, don't get me wrong, but it's only one small part of the big story. This story, understand, Tom, the DOJ has known about these crimes of HSBC for 5 years. And they took no action. What happened was you had an IT guy working for the bank that had all of the numbers, had everything about where all the bones were buried. He handed it to the French investigators. French investigators gave it to the United States 5 years ago. DOJ took no action, even though they had already placed HSBC in a deferred prosecution status, which means that they don't go, nobody goes to jail, they pay some fines, but they keep all their pals out of prison.
Is this also the case where the guy who was the whistleblower was the one who ended up going to jail?
Well, this guy did not go to jail.
Or was that UBS?
UBS and a couple of other very similar stories. But this guy he had all of the information. They threatened to prosecute him. I think the only reason he got out of my memory of it, I don't remember that part of the story in detail, Tom, but I can tell you this. What's important about the story is the United States was given notice of all this. But let me give you a contrast, Tom. Let me tell you how aggressively, while they were letting these thugs, these HSBC thugs get away, let me tell you what they were doing to little people. 2 car dealers who accepted drug dealer money to buy automobiles went to prison for 50 months, 50 serious prison months. 2 New Jersey businessmen lured into an HSBC tax scheme, off to prison for that guy. A Virginia doctor who put his deceased mother, he put a little bit of money in an HSBC Swiss account, off to jail for that guy. Mississippi woman sentenced to 60 months in prison for laundering illegal money in her trucking business. 60 months for we're talking about fractions of money. Truck driver sentenced to 50 months for taking $1 million across the Mexico line, but HSBC hid and laundered billions of dollars in cash for drug cartels and terrorists. And Loretta Lynch and the Covington Burling team, led by Lanny Brewer, who worked for Holder, decided that there's no crime too big for banksters where we actually name individual names and put these criminals in prison. This is an epidemic in the United States, and unfortunately it's having an effect on the way we view criminal law in this country from top to bottom. You know, you'll put somebody in jail for stealing a Hostess Twinkie from a corner store, but where it comes to the person running that corner store who's stealing money from that employee by hustling them on time and, you know, skating time here and skating time there and making $1 here and $1 there off that time clock, we don't do anything about that. It's just a priority issue that's upside down right now, Tom.
Well, I've read several articles recently, and I think there's a couple of books out about this, about how the origins of policing, and that really policing began as these were the thugs who defended the interests of the rich people against the local community or against, the poor. And there's a piece on Huffington Post today about what do you do if the police stop you and you have money in your car or in your pocket, and they can just take it, and it's like, so you go to there was this guy who had $11,000 in his pocket because he literally took it out of the bank to go buy a car to make a down payment. And they stopped him and they took away his money. He never got it. It's like, so if you're a little guy, they steal your money. If you're a rich guy and you're doing it with the banksters, it's all good.
Tom, I don't know how you characterize this as anything but third world banana republic quality justice system. I don't. Please help me with that, because I can't understand we have a two-tier justice system. One for the rich, the powerful, and the politically well-connected, and one for everybody else. Well, for example, we have a toothless enforcement system because at the top, now the toothless enforcement system at the top is set up to be like that. The aggressive, black boot system at the bottom, where we shoot kids in the street because they talk back to a police officer, kill them because we think they have a gun when they have, a toy gun. All the stories we've seen over the last month. It's this. This system is so distinct that if we don't get it under control, how are we any different than Pinochet's Chile? How are we any different from any banana republic third world country? I don't see how we're different.
Yeah, I'm with you. In fact, I'd be inclined to say we have a 3-tiered criminal justice system. The third tier is if you're a person of color being prosecuted. It's bizarre. America's Lawyer, Mike Papantonio, host of Ring of Fire Radio, ringofireradio.com. Thank you, Pap.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks for filling us in on all this stuff. This is astonishing. We'll be back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Pap's website, ringofireradio.com. Check out the show, check out the podcast. It's up every weekend.